The massive ship drifted silently through the dark void of space, its sensors prodding the depths of an unexplored sector. Dr. Reed stood at the observation deck of the research vessel, Explorer, his 4 eyes fixed on the strange readings appearing on his monitors. As the lead archaeologist of the Galactic Council's Historical Research Division, he had seen many ancient ruins and artifacts, but these readings were different. "Director Morris, you need to see this," he called out, his voice trembling with excitement. The ship's director, a tall figure with silvery skin, glided across the deck to join him. The scanners revealed something massive hiding behind a dense asteroid field, not just one ship, but hundreds. As they carefully navigated through the field, the fleet came into view, and both researchers fell silent in awe. The ancient vessels were enormous, their dark hulls stretching for kilometers. Despite their size, they looked primitive by modern standards. Their hulls were made of simple metals, not the quantum crystalline alloys used today. Massive engines dotted their rear sections, crude nuclear fusion drives instead of the modern gravity drives. "Fascinating," Dr. Reed whispered, his secondary eyes blinking rapidly as he took notes. "These ships must be at least 15,000 years old, yet their hull integrity is nearly perfect." The Explorer's crew spent the next several hours documenting their discovery. They found weapon systems that seemed laughably outdated, simple kinetic accelerators and missile tubes instead of energy weapons. The ships appeared to be arranged in a defensive formation, as if waiting for something. Director Morris shook his head dismissively. Primitive technology. Probably some long-dead civilization that didn't make it past their first interstellar war. We should document this and move on to more promising sites. But Dr. Reed couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. He requested permission to board one of the vessels, and after careful scanning showed it was safe, he led a small team across in environmental suits. The interior of the ancient ship was dark and cold, but as they moved through its corridors, emergency lights slowly flickered to life. "Amazing," one of the junior researchers commented. "The power systems are still functioning after all this time." They made their way to what appeared to be the bridge. The control stations were designed for beings with 2 arms and legs, a common configuration in the galaxy. But something about the ergonomics seemed off, slightly different from any known species. Dr. Reed approached the central command station. His hand brushed against a panel, and suddenly holographic displays sprang to life around them. The language that appeared was unlike anything in their database. "Look at these markings," he said, pointing to symbols etched into the captain's chair. "They're not decorative. They're warnings, instructions maybe, but they don't match any known species in the Galactic Council records." Director Morris's voice crackled over the comm. "The Council won't waste resources on obsolete technology, Dr. Reed. Whatever civilization built these ships clearly didn't survive. Their methods and technology were insufficient." As if in response to his words, more systems began activating throughout the ship. Status displays showed weapons and defensive systems in standby mode, preservation protocols still running after thousands of years. "I don't think you understand, Director," Dr. Reed replied, his voice filled with wonder. "These ships weren't abandoned because they failed. They were left here deliberately, waiting for something." He ran his hands over the ancient controls, feeling the solid engineering beneath. "And I believe they're still ready to fight." Back on the Explorer, the Council representatives debated what to do with the discovery. Most agreed with Director Morris. The fleet was an interesting historical footnote, nothing more. The ships were relics, their technology hopelessly outdated compared to modern vessels. But as Dr. Reed continued his research, he couldn't help but wonder why such care had been taken to preserve these vessels, why position them in this exact location, and most importantly, what enemy had they been prepared to face. He had no way of knowing that very soon they would all find out exactly why this ancient fleet had been left behind, and why its builders had been far more clever than anyone suspected. 3 months after the discovery of the ancient fleet, alarms blared throughout the Galactic Council's Emergency Command Center. Admiral Stone stood before the main display screen, his face grim as he watched the footage from their outer colony on Beta 9. "Play it again," he ordered, his voice tight with concern. The recording showed massive organic ships emerging from hyperspace. Their surfaces rippled like living tissue, absorbing the colony's defensive fire without any visible damage. Modern energy weapons, capable of cutting through battleship armor, simply disappeared into the creature's shields. "We lost contact with Beta 9 10 hours ago," reported the communications officer. The colony's population was 5 million. Admiral Stone slammed his fist on the console. "How many ships did we lose?" "3 battle cruisers, sir. Our most advanced vessels. Their weapons couldn't penetrate the enemy's defenses." The door slid open, and Dr. Reed rushed in, clutching a datapad. "Admiral, I've been studying the ancient fleet's weapon systems. You need to see this." He paused, looking at the display screen. "They're here, aren't they? The swarm has returned." The Admiral turned to him. "The what?" "I found references in the old ship's databanks. The original builders called them the swarm, biological ships that adapt to energy weapons. That's why the ancient fleet used kinetic weapons, physical projectiles that could break through their organic shields." Director Morris, who had dismissed the fleet months ago, spoke up from his seat at the council table. "That's absurd. Our energy weapons are thousands of years more advanced than primitive projectile weapons." Another alarm sounded. The display showed 3 more colonies under attack. Modern warships fought bravely, their energy beams lighting up space, but the swarm ships simply absorbed the attacks and kept coming. Dr. Reed connected his pad to the main display. "Look at these weapon designs from the ancient fleet. They're not just simple guns. The projectiles are specially engineered to resonate at frequencies that disrupt biological matter. They knew exactly what they were building these weapons to fight." Admiral Stone studied the technical readouts. "Even if you're right, those ships are ancient. They can't possibly still work after all this time." "That's where you're wrong," Dr. Reed replied. "I've been studying their preservation systems. Everything was designed to last, to be ready when needed. The builders knew the swarm would return. They left us the tools to fight them." The room fell silent as another colony went dark on the display. 15 million more lives lost. "How many more will die while we cling to our pride?" Dr. Reed asked quietly. "The builders of that fleet fought the swarm before. They found a way to win. Are we too proud to learn from them?" Admiral Stone looked around the room, then straightened his uniform. "Dr. Reed, how quickly can you get that fleet operational?" "The automated systems are still running. We just need to understand the control interfaces. Give me a team of engineers, and we can have the first ship ready in 2 weeks." Director Morris stood up, his face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. We can't stake the survival of the Council on obsolete technology. We're staking it on the wisdom of those who fought this enemy before," Admiral Stone replied. "Dr. Reed, you have your team. Take whatever resources you need." As they left the command center, Dr. Reed looked back at the display screen showing the advancing swarm ships. He remembered the warning messages he'd found carved into the ancient captain's chair. The builders had known this day would come. They had prepared for it, leaving behind not just weapons, but hope. Now he just had to prove that their faith in the future hadn't been misplaced. Somewhere in those ancient ships lay the key to humanity's greatest victory, and perhaps the Council's only chance for survival. The ancient ship's corridors hummed with new activity as engineering teams worked to understand its systems. Dr. Reed sat in the captain's chair on the bridge, surrounded by holographic displays showing strings of unknown symbols. For 2 weeks, they had made progress understanding the basic systems, but the ship's main data core remained locked behind layers of security. "Try the new decryption sequence," he called out to his team. They had been working around the clock, knowing that every passing day meant another colony could fall to the swarm. Suddenly, the displays flickered, and the unknown symbols began transforming into readable text. A deep voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "Identity confirmed. Emergency protocols activated, beginning playback of Message 1. The holographic displays merged to show a recording. A being appeared, bipedal like many species, but with distinct features unlike anything in Council records. It wore a uniform with markings similar to those found throughout the ship. To those who find this fleet, we leave you our legacy and our warning. The being began. We are humanity, and we fought the swarm to near extinction. Dr. Reed's 4 eyes widened. Record everything, he ordered, his voice barely a whisper. The message continued. Earth, our homeworld, fell to the swarm despite our best efforts. But in fighting them, we learned their weaknesses. We discovered that their biological shields, while impervious to energy weapons, could not adapt quickly enough to physical penetration at specific frequencies. Technical diagrams appeared, showing weapon designs they had already found. But now, with the context, their genius became clear. We built this fleet not for ourselves, but for you. Our predictive models showed the swarm would return in approximately 15,000 years. We knew we wouldn't survive as a species, but we could prepare others for the fight ahead. The engineering team had stopped working, all eyes fixed on the message. Even Director Morris, who had come to inspect their progress, stood silent. The ships contain everything you need: weapons, tactical data, and combat strategies proven effective against the swarm. We also left something else: an AI construct containing the combined tactical knowledge of our best commanders. Dr. Reed leaned forward as a new set of instructions appeared. Look for a quantum storage unit marked with this symbol, the human continued, showing a marking they had seen repeatedly but hadn't understood. We marked everything important with these warnings and instructions, Dr. Reed realized. What we thought were decorative patterns were actually a visual language, waiting for someone to understand. The message flickered as more technical data flowed across the screens. The weapons aren't primitive. They're precisely engineered to exploit specific weaknesses. The hull design isn't simple. It's optimized for combat against biological entities. Everything about these ships was built with one purpose: to give you a fighting chance. Director Morris stepped forward, his earlier skepticism forgotten. All this time, we thought we were looking at relics of a dead civilization. Instead, we were looking at a gift from one species to the next. The human's image looked directly at them through time. We called ourselves the human race, and this fleet represents the best of what we were. Use it well. The AI will activate once you've proven you understand our purpose. Good luck. Humanity stands with you, even if only in spirit. The message ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Then alarms blared from the modern communication systems. Another colony was under attack. Dr. Reed stood up, determination in his eyes. Now we know what to look for. We can find the AI core and activate these ships properly. How long? Director Morris asked, all trace of mockery gone from his voice. Hours, maybe days. The humans left us a manual. We just had to prove we were willing to look past our assumptions to find it. Dr. Reed turned to his team. Search every ship for quantum storage units with this marking. Humanity left us a teacher. It's time we learned. As the teams rushed to their new tasks, Dr. Reed looked at the captain's chair with new respect. Humans had known they were dying, but instead of giving up, they'd spent their last days preparing to help unknown species fight a battle thousands of years in the future. Now it was up to them to prove worthy of that trust. The engineering bay of the ancient human ship buzzed with activity. Teams of workers carefully dismantled one of the primitive kinetic weapons under the supervision of Chief Engineer Wilson. The massive cannon lay open like a puzzle, revealing layers of technology that grew more impressive with each piece they removed. Impossible, Wilson muttered, studying readings from his scanner. These components shouldn't be able to work together like this. He turned to Dr. Reed, who had been watching the examination. The humans didn't just build weapons, they broke the rules of physics. Dr. Reed moved closer to examine the cannon's inner workings. What do you mean? Wilson pointed to a series of crystals embedded within the barrel. See these? They're quantum-phased. When the projectile passes through them, it partially shifts out of our dimension. That's how it bypasses the swarm's shields. They can't defend against something that's not fully in normal space. But that's advanced technology. Director Morris said, having joined them for the inspection. We only theorized quantum phasing 20 years ago. The humans figured it out 15,000 years ago, Wilson replied. But they hid it inside what looks like a simple railgun. They didn't just solve the problem. They solved it in a way that would last millennia. A junior engineer rushed up to them, holding a datapad. Sir, you need to see this. We've analyzed the projectiles stored in the weapon bays. They're not just metal slugs. They're precision engineered at the atomic level. Wilson took the pad, his eyes widening as he read. The composition changes as the round travels through the barrel. The quantum phasing triggers a cascade of atomic reactions. By the time it hits the target, the projectile has become a dimensional breach device. Dr. Reed finished, understanding dawning in all four eyes. That's why the swarm's biological shields don't work against them. The projectiles create tiny holes in space-time as they impact. Director Morris stared at the weapon with new respect. All this time we thought energy weapons were the peak of technology. We were so focused on making bigger, more powerful beams. All the humans realized the answer was to think smaller, Wilson said. Their weapons don't overpower the swarm's defenses. They slip right through them. Another engineer called them over to a testing chamber. Inside, they had set up a replica of the swarm's biological shielding based on recent battle data. A small demonstration version of the human weapon sat ready to fire. Watch this, the engineer said, activating the weapon. The projectile looked simple enough as it launched, but their sensors showed reality rippling around it as it passed through the quantum crystals. When it hit the shield sample, it didn't explode or pierce through. It simply appeared on the other side, as if the shield wasn't there. Perfect physics, Wilson whispered. The humans found a way to bypass the laws of nature without breaking them. Dr. Reed turned to Director Morris. This is why they left us these ships. Modern energy weapons are useless against the swarm because they're too advanced. These weapons work because they're exactly as complex as they need to be, nothing more. A message flashed on their communication screens. Another swarm attack had begun at the outer colonies. But this time, they didn't feel helpless. How soon can we replicate these weapons? Director Morris asked. Wilson shook his head. We don't need to. Look at the maintenance logs. These weapons were built to last for 20,000 years minimum. We just need to power them up. Then let's do it, Dr. Reed said. The humans gave us everything we need. Now we just have to trust in their engineering. As the teams rushed to prepare the weapons for battle, Dr. Reed studied the ancient writing etched into the cannon's casing. The humans had known that simpler solutions often worked better than complex ones. They had built these ships not to show off their technology, but to save lives. Now, 15,000 years later, their wisdom was about to be proven right. The ancient ship's bridge pulsed with energy as Dr. Reed and his team worked to activate the AI core they had finally located. The quantum storage unit sat in the center of the room, its surface marked with the now familiar human warning symbols. Power levels stable, reported Wilson from his station. Quantum matrix alignment at 98%. Dr. Reed took a deep breath and pressed his hand against the activation panel. The storage unit hummed to life, projecting a holographic figure onto the bridge. It took the form of a human, wearing what they now knew was an old Earth military uniform. I am Captain Wells, tactical AI construct of the Third Fleet, the figure announced. Status report. Hibernation successful. Time elapsed since last activation. 15,342 years. Captain Wells, Dr. Reed said carefully, we found your fleet because we need help. The swarm has returned. The AI's expression remained calm, but the hologram's color shifted slightly to a deeper blue. As predicted by our models. Ship status. All systems functional, Wilson reported. The preservation protocols worked perfectly. We've already examined the weapons systems. And, belay that, Wells interrupted. First question, how many colonies have been lost? 4 so far, Director Morris answered, stepping forward. Millions dead. Our weapons are useless against them. Wells nodded. Accessing tactical database. The swarm always follows the same initial pattern. They test defenses, adapt to current weapon technologies, then begin full invasion. Time is critical. The eye waved its hand, and dozens of holographic displays appeared around the bridge, activating full fleet emergency protocols, all ships powering up. Through the bridge viewport, they watched in awe as lights began appearing across the ancient fleet. Massive engines hummed to life, and weapon systems charged with a deep, resonant sound that seemed to vibrate through space itself. How? Director Morris started to ask. Automated maintenance systems have kept all ships in battle-ready condition, Wells explained. The humans who built us knew they wouldn't be here to fight. Everything was designed to work instantly when needed. Admiral Stone's voice came through the communication system. Dr. Reed, we're detecting massive power signatures from the fleet. What's happening? The fleet is awakening, Admiral, Reed replied. And we have help. Connecting you to Captain Wells. The AI's hologram shifted to face the communication screen. Admiral, I have 15,000 years of tactical data about fighting the swarm. Request permission to begin fleet integration procedures. Stone's eyes widened at the sight of the human figure, but he recovered quickly. Permission granted. What do you need from us? Your modern ships have excellent sensors and communication systems, Wells said. My fleet has the weapons to defeat the swarm. Together, we can coordinate an effective defense, but we must act quickly. The bridge crew watched as Wells brought up detailed battle plans. The AI moved with purpose, displaying the efficiency of a machine, but making decisions with the insight of an experienced commander. The humans programmed you with their actual battle experience, Dr. Reed realized. I contain the combined tactical knowledge of 50 human fleet commanders who fought the swarm, Wells confirmed. Their experience, their victories, their losses, all preserved to help guide you. A warning alarm sounded. New swarm ships have been detected approaching the heavily populated system. They're following the same pattern, Wells noted, just as they did against Earth. But this time, we're ready for them. The AI turned to Admiral Stone's image. Sir, request permission to move the fleet into defensive positions. Stone nodded. Granted. Director Morris, do you have any objections? Morris, who had once dismissed the fleet as primitive, shook his head. None, Admiral. I think it's time we showed the swarm that humanity's legacy still has teeth. As the ancient ships began moving into formation, their engines casting a soft blue glow against the darkness of space, Dr. Reed couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The humans had turned their own extinction into a gift for the future, preparing not just weapons, but wisdom and leadership for a battle they knew would come. Now finally, their long wait was over. The fleet was awake, and the real war was about to begin. Space lit up with explosions as the combined fleet faced the largest swarm attack yet. The modern council ships formed a defensive screen, their advanced sensors tracking enemy movements, while the human fleet took position behind them. Swarm bioships approaching in attack formation, reported the sensor officer aboard the council flagship. Admiral Stone watched the tactical display as hundreds of organic vessels surged toward them. Remember, Captain Wells' hologram announced across all channels, let them think their shields are working. Draw them in close. The swarm struck first. Massive tentacles of living metal lashed out at the council ships. Energy weapons fired back, splashing harmlessly against biological shields. Just as in previous battles, the swarm vessels began adapting, their surfaces rippling as they absorbed each hit. They're following the pattern, Wells observed, just like they did at Earth. Admiral Stone, begin fallback maneuver. The modern ships pulled back, appearing to retreat. The swarm pressed forward eagerly, their confidence growing as they pushed through the seemingly ineffective defense. "Now," Wells commanded. The human fleet's weapons spoke for the first time in 15,000 years. There was no bright energy beam, no flashy explosion. Simple metal projectiles, enhanced by quantum crystals, shot through space. As they passed through the swarm's biological shields, reality itself seemed to shiver. The effect was devastating. Swarm ships began breaking apart, their supposedly impenetrable defenses useless against weapons that slipped between dimensions. What had appeared as primitive projectile weapons were bypassing their shields completely. Direct hits on multiple targets, Wilson reported from his engineering station. The quantum phasing is working perfectly. Dr. Reed watched from the bridge of the lead human ship as the swarm's formation broke apart in confusion. Their biological ships tried to adapt, their surfaces morphing rapidly, but they couldn't defend against something that wasn't fully in normal space. Pattern 2, Wells ordered. The ancient fleet shifted formation with practiced precision. This is how we defeated their first wave at Earth. They never learned to counter it. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, their simple but devastating weapons tearing through the swarm's defenses. Modern Council vessels provided targeting data, making each shot even more effective than the humans had managed thousands of years ago. "They're retreating," someone shouted as the swarm ships began to pull back. "No," Wells corrected. "They're regrouping." This is where most species would celebrate victory too early. But humanity learned this lesson the hard way. Admiral Stone, prepare for Phase 2. As if on cue, more swarm ships emerged from hyperspace behind the fleet. But Wells had anticipated this exact move. Classic pincer attack, the AI noted calmly. They used this at the Battle of Saul. Humanity's last stand taught us how to counter it. The ancient fleet split into precisely calculated groups, taking positions that seemed to make no sense until the trap was sprung. Caught between formations of human ships, the swarm found themselves in a deadly crossfire. "Fire all batteries," Wells commanded. "Show them why humanity engineered these weapons to last 15,000 years." The space between fleets filled with quantum-phased projectiles. Swarm ships died by the dozens, their biological machines unable to adapt to weapons that operated outside normal physics. What had seemed like primitive technology proved to be their perfect counter. Director Morris, watching from the Council command ship, shook his head in amazement. All this time we thought we were advancing beyond simple projectile weapons. But the humans, they didn't just build weapons, they built the exact weapons needed for this moment. The battle raged for hours, but its outcome was never in doubt. The swarm, facing weapons they couldn't adapt to and tactics that predicted their every move, finally broke formation and flowed into hyperspace. As the fleet regrouped, Admiral Stone opened a channel to all ships. First victory against the swarm in Council history, and we have humanity to thank for it. Not just their weapons, Dr. Reed added, looking at Wells' hologram. Their foresight, their determination to help others even after their own civilization fell. The AI nodded, its expression both proud and somber. Humanity knew the cost of underestimating the swarm. They wanted to make sure no one paid that price again. 1 year after the first battle against the swarm, the Galactic Council chamber was packed for a historic ceremony. The massive room, usually filled with political debate, today hosted representatives from every council species. At the center stood the familiar hologram of Captain Wells, along with Dr. Reed, Admiral Stone, and Director Morris. "Let the record show," announced the council president, "that today we officially recognize the contribution of humanity to the survival of galactic civilization." The chamber's main display showed images from the past year's victories. The human fleet, once dismissed as primitive, had led the defense against 12 major swarm invasions. Not a single colony had been lost since the ancient ships joined the fight. What started as an archaeological curiosity, Dr. Reed addressed the assembly, turned out to be the greatest gift one species has ever left to another. The humans knew they were dying, yet they spent their final years preparing to help unknown civilizations in the distant future. Director Morris stepped forward, his earlier skepticism long forgotten. We have established the Human Legacy Institute to study their technology and wisdom. Already, we've learned that much of what we considered primitive was actually elegant engineering focused on long-term effectiveness. The display showed teams of engineers studying the human fleet's systems. Every discovery revealed new layers of ingenuity, not just in the weapons, but in every aspect of the ship's design. Their quantum phase technology alone has revolutionized our understanding of physics, Wilson reported from his position near the council table. But more importantly, they've taught us to look beyond flashy solutions to find what really works. Admiral Stone addressed the chamber next. The swarm has retreated beyond known space. Our analysts believe they won't return for at least a century. But this time, we'll be ready. The human fleet doesn't just protect us. It teaches us how to protect ourselves. Captain Wells' hologram surveyed the chamber with calm pride. Humanity understood that technology alone doesn't win wars. They left you their experience, their strategies, and most importantly, their perspective. Every ship in this fleet represents lessons learned in battle, preserved for future generations. The council president raised a hand for attention. We've commissioned deep space expeditions to search for Earth, humanity's homeworld. While their civilization may be gone, we hope to learn more about the species that sacrificed so much to protect the future. Dr. Reed activated a small holographic projector, displaying the symbol they had first discovered on the captain's chair. We found variations of this marking throughout the fleet. We now know it's not just a warning or instruction. It's humanity's message to the future. Roughly translated, it means, stand together, fight smart, never give up. The chamber fell silent as a new hologram appeared, a recreation of Earth based on data from the fleet's archives. The beautiful blue planet, once home to the species that had saved them all. The humans didn't build weapons, Dr. Reed continued. They built hope. They faced extinction, not with despair, but with determination to help others. They turned their last days into a gift that would last millennia. Director Morris stepped forward again. I once laughed at these ships, calling them primitive relics. I've never been more wrong. The humans weren't behind us technologically. They were so far ahead that they could make complex solutions look simple. The council president raised her hands. Let it be recorded that from this day forward, humanity will be remembered as guardians of galactic civilization. Though their species is lost to time, their legacy lives on in the fleet that protects us and the wisdom they left behind. As the chamber erupted in applause, Dr. Reed looked at Captain Wells' hologram. The A's expression showed something that looked very much like human pride. They would be pleased, Wells said quietly, not because we preserved their memory, but because we learned from their sacrifice. Humanity's greatest wish was that others would survive where they could not. Above the council chamber, the ancient fleet stood watch in high orbit, its weapons ready, its systems perfected by long-dead human engineers. Within its halls, new generations would learn the lessons humanity had paid so dearly to teach, that true strength lies not in powerful weapons, but in the wisdom to know how to use them, and the foresight to prepare for challenges yet to come. The humans were gone, but their legacy would endure among the stars.